Brothers, how's it going?
What's up?
What's good? What's good?
Man, just chilling, man. How's everybody week been?
Good. I'm tired. Kid's birthday party turned into an adult birthday party. The Dewan's son. Tired.
Yeah, that's how we do it, man. The kid turned 7, so we had a little birthday shindig for him last night. He had fun. You know, we sat back as adults, kicked it, had some conversations that would have been great for perspective, but those can't make it on air, man. Those are some real conversations. You know, we sat around with our wives and talked, so it was definitely good for the soul.
Oh, what was that? What was that game y'all was playing called? The board game.
The board game we was called was, I don't know. It was some questions though. I have to ask my wife. I'm pretty sure she listening, so she'll text me.
Yeah, y'all gotta be back home when y'all. Or back out here when y'all come out here.
I'll have it by the end of the show. The name of the card game, but it was a good card game, and it was very informative. It allowed you to ask questions to your spouse. You know, questions that you normally don't ask them. Hey, what made you choose me as the one? What is something that you would want me to do differently in our relationship? Things like that. So some good questions. But it segues into kind of what we're talking about today because, you know, obviously everybody hopefully has heard about our view, the Kirk Franklin's argument with his son. And you know, some of the language that was exchanged there. There's another situation with a young lady who took her son's closet and built him mimic a jail cell essentially for him as a form of punishment. And we're going to discuss both of those. But before we even get into that, man, you know, as fathers, I think that, you know, as African Americans, we are playing a more and more important role into the childhood rearing process. I think, you know, a lot of our fathers, if they were around, and maybe was, you know, out working, not really involved in the day-to-day. I think that, you know, there's statistics that shows that in 2-parent homes, African American males are more likely than white males, Asian males, Mexican males, Hispanic males to be involved in the child rearing processes. So for us, I always say that mothers protect, fathers prepare. So as fathers, and you know, we letting the cat out of the bag in perspective. Y'all know what cat I'm talking about. We letting the cat out of the bag on perspective, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean it's in the world already.
All right, we'll tell the world.
Okay. They talking about parenting, but the brother gonna be a parent. I got about 2 more months before he get here. We ain't chose his name yet, but it's Baby Galloway for the moment. So
good.
I'm a youngster, man. Now my grade's gonna be gray.
They're gonna be gray.
All that shit I thought was funny what these kids was doing ain't gonna be so damn funny no more.
I know, right? So it's coming, man. But I had some good models as far as my parents and then y'all dudes, man, because y'all got some old kids. Bear's son is damn near an adult. So Tab got an adult daughter. So definitely excited about this, man.
She ain't too adult. We ain't taking no DM sliding over here. I'm still tripping.
Right. Not too much. And you know, and the thing about it is we all have perspectives on parenting, whether we've done it from a godparent standpoint, we've done it from a parent, an uncle. We're getting to a point within our community where that back and forth between protecting and preparing can cause some type of arguments and disputes. So I'm just gonna put it out there, you know, as fathers, do you guys believe in spanking and whoopings? Do you guys believe in spanking your child?
I don't know. I mean, this is a good question. I don't know.
You ain't gave little tap no spanking, bro?
Man, I mean, okay, I'll go first. I do believe in some situations causing for spanking. However, I mean, compared to me and how I grew up and just the way I parent with my kids, it's few far and in between. With Taff, I mean, shoot, very few far and in between. But I be threatening them all the time. It's just one of those things where, I mean, kids got so much information these days and all types of stuff. It's kind of like you do have to take more time to talk to them, right? Like there are certain things I do believe in instilling fear in, just because I want you to know if you touch the stove, it's hot. Like I try to use that same method for those things. But at the same time, there's a lot of more talking and patience goes and things, because I don't want to get into a situation where I go too far. And now it's always a fear level between me being his parent and he won't come to me and talk to me for stuff, right? Like I still want to be the Phil Jackson to his Michael Jordan, you know? So I got to keep a balance in it all.
Yeah, so I spanked my son one time, and the one time I did it, I think was enough. And that was my older son. My younger son, I've never spanked him before, and I found ways that I don't have to. You know, there's other ways to make my presence felt depending on the situation without spanking him. So, yeah, I spanked once, and you know that's how I was raised, by a spanking. But then once you find that niche, you really don't have to spank unless they done did something that you're like, there's no way we're gonna be able to explain what you got going on. You got to feel it. That's my perspective. But in essence, I don't think you need to spank if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, for me, I think my dad never gave me a spank. I've never seen me spank my brother or my sister. So them kids is grown now. But my mom, she spanked early, but she started spanking me maybe like at 10 or something. The most crucial punishment she ever gave me, she took everything I had for Christmas away, took it back to the store. The whole tree was blank. Like I'm like playing. I don't know what I did, bro. I don't know what I did. She took all that shit back. Had nothing for Christmas. I'm like, okay, yeah, I messed that up. Yeah, she started spanking me about 10, but she'd just take stuff away. I mean, that's what parents are doing now because they got electronics and tablets and all that. When she took Christmas away, that was crucial. I was like, damn, I messed that up.
Boy, heart was broken. He was like, oh no, all the stuff I thought I was gonna get is gone.
Gone.
Damn. That's great.
But yeah, no, to me, like I said, I think I might spank, like you said, if it's something dangerous, touching the stove, grabbing a knife, or that's like a hand swap for a little kid. But like for a spanking, I don't know, he gonna have to do something real ridiculous to get a spanking. I can't even imagine what he gonna do, but he gonna try it. I already know he gonna try it. But I think I got more patience than my wife. She might be the one that's gonna be like, whack. I'll probably be more laid back, but we gonna see.
Right.
Yeah, I think similar to my household. I've spanked my son once. I think he did something wild, like ran out in the middle of the street without looking after I told him about 5 times, don't do it. And, you know, for me, would I rather him feel this pain of this spanking or feel the pain of, you know, death from getting hit by a car? You know, sometimes I think spanking is, you know, is those moments when it's real serious. You know, I grew up being spanked. You know, my mom, man, I probably got my last whooping at 18, right? So, you know, I see the benefits of it, and I see the, you know, the ways where it can harm. You know, I think for me, I needed to be spanked, man. I was doing stuff all the time. So I've never viewed it as abuse. I didn't even think it was, I never considered it abuse till, you know, you get grown and they start, well, if you're spanking your kids, you're abusing them. Nah, that wasn't abuse. That was necessary. That was for punishment. You know what I mean? But I do think that temperaments are different. For me, I needed to probably be spanked in order to learn my lesson. My brother, on the other hand, you didn't have to spank him. You start yelling at him, you know, he was gonna cry. So he didn't get as many spankings. And my sister never got a spanking, right? Mm-hmm. She never got a spanking. You know, my mom had me when she was younger, so she did what she needed to do. My father, he's never spanked me. He would talk to me. He would sit down and talk to me and, you know, son, I'm disappointed, and things of that nature. So that stuff had an influence as well. But I think it's really about figuring out a balance for your kids. You know, my rule of thumb is if you got multiple kids and you raising them the same, then somebody's probably getting left behind, right? Somebody's not getting the treatment that they need. You have to figure out what works for your kids. And I do think that there are some situations where your kids probably should get spanked. Your kid went up in that store and stole a bunch of candy, they need a whooping. And the reason they do is because if you don't spank them, society gonna spank them even harder.
Man,
you know what I'm saying? Society gonna spank them harder. So what you're trying to teach them is, look, if you continue down this behavior, you're going to get this, but worse. And I think the goal of punishment is to stop an undesirable behavior. So what you have to do is, if they're doing something that's undesirable, you have to figure out a way to stop it.
I mean, I was just thinking about that, right? Like my daughter, I ain't never gave her a spanking anything. I think I yelled at her one time, and I didn't even yell at her. She was like 6 and she went outside to empty the trash without me knowing. And I was like upstairs or something like that. And I was like, why did you do that? You know, but the disappointment that she had made her cry. And then I felt bad, wanted to damn near cry too, because she made her cry. But I mean, it was cool though. Like you said, the 2-parent dynamic, right? When it came to her mom, I mean, she could tell her own stories. Her mom was a lot tougher on things than I was, you know? And I mean, with Tav, it's just kind of like, I think I'm more tougher with him than his mom is and stuff. And it's just this different roles, right? When you do have a 2-parent system, you're able to display and play off each other, you know, and one person can assume this role when it comes to kids. Obviously, you know, with a male, it's easier for me to go in there and have, you know, more aggressive situations with him when I need to, opposed to him having a mom who's there to still provide that nurturing and nature and all of that stuff that still allows the relationship to flow. But I mean, I'm not going to make it seem like I'm tough. I'm a softie when it comes to my kids and stuff like that. But I mean, it's a balance that comes in between that too. Like, I will say I've worked in environments, some very affluent environments where people aren't whooping their kids at all. And you get called there and they're like, can you deal with my kid because he's refusing to go to school or cleaning up or he's cursing me out? And it's like, I can't assume the role of you as the parent and get this fixed. And then, because when I leave, you're going to go back to getting punked again. You know, it's like, I can't come in and step in that role. So, I mean, for those that don't do anything with their kids, I've seen it kind of off the chain as well, too. So there's definitely a sweet science and a balance to it all. And parents got to step in there and do their part.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times the way I work with it is the one time I did spank, I think that was more on, I didn't know how, and this is just me being honest, I didn't know how to parent in that situation. And only thing I thought of was the discipline of a spank. Whereas as time went on, I found ways to, if that's how you're going to act, this discipline or this outcome is going to counter that activity. So that's what I started to learn is like, that's how you're going to act. This is how we're going to deal with this so that you don't do that again. So that's why I went away from spanking. And just like you just shared, Taff, Jeff and I worked at a facility where people would always bring their kids. I don't know how many times you ran into it, but there's times that people were like, hey, can I bring my kid just so that my kid can see how these kids are living because of, you know, their actions. And I felt some type of way about it because I used to be like, well, these kids aren't for like research. So
yeah, they're not animals or something.
You can't come in here and just show your kid how some juvenile hall kids are acting. Now it's not gonna work that way. But like you said, you got to figure out a way how to correct your children, because having somebody else do it, then you're losing the authority and they're not going to look at you nor engage with you anymore if you're giving somebody else that job. So I don't know if I like the idea of having somebody else step in at all.
I don't like it. Don't call the police if your kids is being bad. You got to figure that out on your own.
I think, you know, as a therapist, I've had to assume that role at times where, you know, I've gotten calls or text messages from parents. I need you to deal with him because I can't deal with him. He's not listening to me. And I've had to have a conversation with that kid, assuming a parental role because that kid's not listening to their mom or, you know, and things of that nature. And I just think, so for me, my rule of thumb is like, if you're going to spank your kid, make sure they know why they're getting spanked. And then make sure after you spank them, you sit down and talk to them about what's going on. You got to have a conversation with these kids before. You know, I think what was absent when I was younger is I knew why I was getting spanked, but there was no conversation after. So I'm like, man, you still like me? We still good? Right? Yeah. Or my mom was savage with it, right? My mama hit me at like 9 a.m. when she at work. Like, oh, okay, you didn't do this? You getting a whooping when I get home from work. And so she get home at like 7, 8. She a nurse. She worked long hours. She get home 7 to 8. She done brought McDonald's in. We done sat down as a family, ate McDonald's. She asked everybody what they do today, all that. So I'm thinking, oh, it's good. I ain't getting no whooping. And then I go in the room. She'll go lay down. She'll get in the shower. And then she'll yell my name. Oh, don't forget. Come get that whooping. I'm like, bro, this is a setup. I thought we was good. You know what I'm saying? Like infamous. Like, don't forget, come get that whooping. And I got to a point where, you know, I was able to look at it like risk reward. Okay, the street lights, you know, I had to be in before the street lights came on, but we having fun. You know, we down there playing football outside. We kicking in, some little girls running around. And I'm like, shoot. I got to a point where I'm like, oh, well, what's the worst thing gonna happen? I'm gonna get a whooping. Shoot, do I take that whooping for 5 minutes to stay outside for extra 30, 45 minutes? All day. So, you know, I think that when you come to your punishment, it can't be predictable, because for me, it got predictable. I knew what my punishment was. It was going to be a whooping. So because of that, I was able to look at the risk reward associated if I wanted to deal with that punishment. I think as parents, you got to have a tool bag of different things that you can utilize to punish your children so they can understand the magnitude of what's going on.
So I wanted to also piggyback on that. Not only have that kind of conversation so they understand the punishment, but also having those conversations leads to how you engage with your kid when they get older, right? And it also leads to how they then view, life and risk reward as they get older. And that's why I went away from the spanking, because when I got a spanking at a young age, just like you, I'm like, oh, the worst that's gonna happen is just a spanking. Next thing you know, you just prepare yourself for a spanking.
Right.
And there's no follow-up conversation. So you're like, as long as I get through the spanking, I'm good. It's only gonna last a couple of minutes. And then as you right, and then as you get older, though, since that's the only way of my negative actions, or if I did something bad, that's the way that we communicate it. As I get older now, I'm not going to tell you if I really do get in trouble, because I don't know how to talk to you in that manner.
Yeah,
so next thing you know, so what I'm trying to say is those foundations of the way you discipline your kid and you have that verbal communication leads to what they do when they get older. Because now, if they don't respect you on certain levels, they're not going to come to you, and you get when there is a conflict in the family, you get the kid who don't want to participate. And next, you're always going to have that family disconnection because there was no real communication.
I agree with you. Just when it comes to that, when it came to like my dad and my mom, right? Like my dad obviously was the authoritative figure, but I would be like, oh, I ain't going to tell him nothing. I didn't really want to communicate with him on that level about different things that would go on in life and stuff like that. But I mean, just like, most males do, they do end up kind of, having that type of bond with their mother because it is a nurturing relationship. But I always felt more comfortable talking to my mom about stuff. But it was still a dynamic that was set in the household that, okay, they still on their team. They team parent and I'm team kid. So if it was something that came up that I thought was critical and I had to weigh the risk or the reward, I'm like, oh, fuck it. I'm lying because I'm not willing to. I'd rather let this ride out and see who could win the battle of being sneaky and wit than to tell them the truth. I don't have no trust in the communication with them. I have no trust in being like, I made a mistake and I did something wrong. Can I come to them and help it get fixed without, that fear of being like, well, dad is going to cuss me out and I might get an ass whipping for it or something like that. So now the line of communication is broken. And I think that's what I mean when I try to balance what goes on with my son. It's like, yeah, I don't know about y'all. I know y'all done said I didn't only whoop my kid one time thing. He didn't got his ass whooped more than once. But the whole point is that my whole thing is I don't want it to be the only way that I use disciplinary methods. Now it's taking away iPad. No, you can't play the PlayStation on the weekend. I get innovative with it because I can't lose that level of communication that I think is important.
Yeah, no, those are all good, but it's like what they call like debriefing. So like with CPS people, we would tell people, y'all work for CPS for 10 years. So in Texas, you can spank your kids. The rule is you can spank your kids, but you got to have like a target zone, which is their butt. So if you get them a little low, you assume you're aiming in the right spot. But if you're getting wraparounds on orange, but the kid will try to block, or if you hit across their bellies or their chest or their back and all that kind of stuff, then that's too much.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like you don't went far out. You out your mind. You just beating your kid ass instead of being disciplined or disciplinarian. But if you're gonna spank, we always talk about having a debriefing. Why did I spank you? This is why I spanked you. This is the corrective behavior. You should have did this, that, or the other instead. And that's the important part. Is the conversation after, because kid, like, what the hell I get spanked for? I don't even know what I did, or what should I have done differently?
Yeah,
moving forward, like what can I do differently on the next time? So I ain't got to get this spanking. But here in Texas, you can spank. It's just like I said, that target zone. But CPS still might not be sure.
That's the important, right? Because you got to think about it. We're 4 Black males. We all, in some regard, deal with other children outside of the children within our homes. But and I know from my home, Tav mentioned it, Jeff mentioned it. I don't know P's experience, but my wife is more of the heavy-handed one, right? She's the yeller, hollerer, and all that. And I don't too much yell at my son and all that because I don't feel like I need to. And more so, a lot of the stuff he do, I don't care. Like, oh, you jumping on the couch? Have at it. You know what I'm saying? Like things like that. So, I mean, I'm less likely to care about a kid being a kid, especially a boy. Boys are a lot more curious. And so they're going to do stuff that they're not supposed to do simply because they're trying to discover, what's this? Does this work? Hey, if I put my hand, through this window with the window break or with my hand break, things of that nature, right? So you understand that boys are curious and they're going to do things. I think it's a balance. You know, for me, my thing is I want my son to be able to articulate himself through his feelings and through his emotions at all points. So even when he's upset, he's frustrated, he's crying. So that's why I talk to him a lot. And when I talk to him, you know, I don't hover over him. I get down on eye level. I get down on one knee when we're looking at eye to eye, you know, so he can see, hey, I'm not trying to be this intimidating force, but I do want you to understand that we're going to learn how to talk about these situations. All else fails. And when I tell him, hey, if you talk to me about it, you won't be in trouble, I keep that promise. Because like Tab said, you want to make sure that that trust happens, right? That trust is there, you know. And so sometimes we're so scared of telling our parents about stuff because they've never created an atmosphere where we felt comfortable with talking to them. Safe zone. And like Tab said, on another regard, when we don't have some type of structure, rule, discipline within our home as father figures, then you get those situations and it happens. We all live in the suburbs, right? You know what I'm saying? We all, to a certain degree, are living a privileged life. And as a result, I don't want my kid to ever feel like he can disrespect me or or talk crazy to me. You know, we don't want no Kirk Franklin situations going on. But on the same token, that's part of it. You know, and for the viewers who don't know, you know, and we're going to talk about this, you know, Kirk Franklin had a dispute in which his son, who's 31 years old, recorded the conversation. And as a result, it sounded like it resulted in Kirk, you know, calling his son a bitch and, you know, a couple other names. He told him he was going to break his neck and all type of stuff. As a father, how did you guys feel about that? You know, seeing someone, you know, obviously they're a celebrity. It's still their private life, their private home. How did you guys feel about the situation with Kirk Franklin and his son?
That's a tough one, man. I think there's some characteristics about his son I think are a little weary if you take me your dad and putting it out there. So that's a little weird to me. But the way Kirk was talking to him, man, even though he's an adult, that's still your child. So it's like y'all talking about team parents, team kid. Regardless of how old your son is, I think like 33. I don't think you should be talking to him like that, because if he say the same thing back to you or whatever, then it's gonna be a problem. So I don't know what the boy said to Kirk to make him say that, but I'm sure it had to be something, you know, real crucial for him to go across that level. But Kirk said they had a strange relationship for years, but I don't think Kirk should have been talking to him like that or putting my foot in your neck and all that kind of crazy stuff, man. That's overboard. That sounds like you talking to a dude off the street versus your actual son. So I think you shouldn't have done that. But there's something about the son for you to be taping that. It's some bitch assness or something going on with that dude.
Yeah, he called him a bitch ass bleepity bleep. But the whole thing is that you taping your dad's conversation. You taping your dad's conversation for the world to hear. Your dad is a public figure who makes his money off of his relationship with the people, and he's having an issue with his son. And it was perfect timing, right? All we got was pretty much Kirk going off on the kid. We didn't hear what the kid had did previously to that, right? So the characteristics are there to fit the title that was given to him by Kirk Franklin. I will say it like that. Then the other part about that is that too, I mean, are we really, you know, his name is Kirk Franklin, so we know he's a gospel person, this and that. Like, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on him just because he's in that role. Is he not entitled to have those type of conversations with his kid? Like, just because you're from the church don't mean that you don't curse at all, period, point blank. It doesn't mean that you don't have a drink occasionally or sip wine occasionally. So I'm not going to put him on a pedestal to say that he's any holier than thou. And I mean, whatever happened with him and his son, he must have felt that either he was fit or he had a moment where he lost it. Obviously, it's not the best way to communicate with somebody, but it happened. And I'm not going to fault him or shake my head or finger at him.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to go on this. One, I think that, you know, if that was Kirk's response, and, you know, that's their family dynamic and that's with their family. But now that it's public, the way I looked at it was like, there's a lot of miscommunication that's going on for him to want to tape his dad. On top of that, there's a lot of disrespect between the both of them for them to have that argument and to go that far. Yeah. But then the last part, I'm really thinking of, there's a lot of trauma that's got to have taken place over time for the son to feel like, you know what, I got to record you so I can show you how you act. I don't know if that was, you know, maybe that was the son's intent. Like, this is how we've been communicating the whole time I've been alive, and this is just how we engage. And now I'm going to take this opportunity to put you on blast about it. So in my mind, I'm like, there must have been a lot of trauma that has taken place over time for the son to resort to that act, to for the most part, knowing I'm gonna get my dad's attention through this negative outburst. So that just shows that there is a lot of lack of communication over time. And for him to talk to his son in that manner, that couldn't have been the first time. Like, you don't just start picking that language out the blue. I've never had an argument with my son, and then when he hits 30, now I'm gonna really start cussing you out. That I must have been cussing you out before this opportunity or this space took place. At the end of the day, shoot, they got to find a way to either be civil and communicate. Because now he's 30. You know what I'm saying? He's not. He may take it to like, now you talk to me as a man, and I am a man. I'm gonna really show you, and it's gonna go from verbal to physical. I mean, it could for him to say the things that he said. Yeah. At the same time, though, I'm like, hey, he's a man. He's still, even though he's a Christian man, he still got faults. We all do. Yeah. So he got his own thing he got to deal with when it comes to him and his family. And now that he's on blast, we all know that you and your family got a lot of miscommunication that take place.
And I think to piggyback on that, P, a lot of families just got miscommunication. For me, it's a private moment. It's a private family moment that, for whatever reason, his son, who has some traits, bitch assness traits, decided to make public. You know what I'm saying? I think that if there was a situation where he felt like his father needed intervention, he could have took him to the red table, or Ayana Fix My Life, or he could have just hit me up on dbennetcounseling.com. I would have got him in for a session. But I don't think you take that, you don't intentionally involve the world in your family business because you're trying to prove your dad to be the bad guy or something like that, or you're playing the victim role, especially as an adult. Now, had he been a younger kid, teenager, I can understand that per se, because teenagers put everything on social media. But as an adult, the actions and the consequences associated with that, potentially for your father, for your family, for the legacy that your father has or hasn't created. I don't know the history. I don't know the whole dynamic. Is there a situation that arises where I may ever talk to my son like that? Yep, 100%. And I'll be honest with you. I love my son with all my heart. But if my son decided to put his hands on a woman, or he running around doing something that's threatening his livelihood or something like that, we know in the African American community, one of the things that we do to posture is we talk aggressive, real aggressive.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I told my son the other day that I was gonna hurt his body. I forgot something crazy he did. I said, I'm gonna hurt your body, like something. I mean, cause some type of injury to you. I think sometimes we talk aggressive. It's more so because we're trying to make the message or whatever we're trying to say stick.
Put that ump on it. Yeah, you got to put that ump on it.
You're trying to put it on it. So for me, I think anybody who's judging what he did behind closed doors to his son, who's an adult, a 30-year-old adult, they have to be able to look in the mirror and say to themselves, hey, have I never talked crazy to my kid before? Have I never done something to harm my kid? We live in a society that's rough, and too often we get to a point where we're so sensitive about what people say to their kids. Are they whooping their kids? Are they yelling at their kids? Are they screaming at their kids? Yes, trauma exists. Yes, trauma is a real thing. But there's a difference between abuse and a whooping. There's a difference between me cussing you out today, tomorrow, and me causing verbal trauma or emotional trauma throughout your life. There's a difference. And we can't really make that judgment off a 2-minute clip. But I will say that, people have to do what they need to do in their homes to get the message across. Would I talk to my daughter like that? Probably not. Doubt it. Highly doubt it. Would I say my wife may talk to her like that? Man, y'all see all these shows and these women and daughter be going at it and all that. So I think it's just different. And I think as Black men, we're raising Black men to go out in this world. And this world ain't easy on Black men. It ain't. So at home, we have to make sure that they understand that they have to have a little bit of emotional resiliency in the regard. So do I talk aggressive to my kids? Sometimes, because when my kid hear it on the playground, I don't want him to cry about it. I want him to be able to like, oh, okay, I know how to talk aggressive back.
So I can't say I really ever talked real aggressive to my son. I think, and Like I ain't never really cussed him out. I'm glad he's here. I ain't never cussed him out, but the way in which I've talked to him, I think gets the point across. And I can't wait till he gets on here and say it. Like I've never really had to cuss him out, but the way that I just got at him about what was going on was enough for he was like, oh snap, like I'm caught up in a situation. So I think it's a really, again, I'm gonna go back to why I said the Kirk Franklin thing. I think it's about how the relationship was established way before it got to this point. Like if that's the only way they've always communicated, then yeah, that's always going to work. And that's all the way he think he can get across to his son. But if he's really had them sit down like, yo, just don't make me have to rip off your neck. And then when them situations come up, he's like, this is one of those times I was talking about probably ripping off your neck. Now, the way that they engage, I think makes a big difference because again, I don't think at 30, we wouldn't want no man to ever speak to us in that manner. So even if it is my dad, if my dad ever called me like you being a bit, I'll be like, who are you talking to? You know.
See, hold on, P. Let me tell you why that's the problem. You're right, but you know, and not to pick on law enforcement, but if a police officer pull your kid over and he talking reckless and crazy to you as an adult, you know what you're gonna do? You're gonna take that because you recognize you saying something out of pocket may get you in some other situations that you can't account for. So I think it just depends. You walking through the wrong neighborhood and they start talking crazy to you, you know what you're gonna do? You're gonna take it. You're gonna evaluate the situation and you go figure out if this is a situation where you need to sit down and shut up or you need to bark back. And so I think to a certain degree, the conversation is, can we talk reckless to our kids for them to understand that in life, people won't talk reckless to them simply, even if they're just trying to get them out of their seat, out of their comfort zone, and understand that that's part of parenting. That's part of preparing.
My bad, Tav. Go ahead.
No, that's a good point that you brought up. I mean, you know, just like we're talking about black sons and their interactions with the police, right? People believe that the talk is the same, right? Like the way that, you know, all different families, all different nationalities have their conversation on how they encounter the police is the same. And it's not, right? Because obviously in a large amount of black homes, I can't speak for all, there's a certain level of trauma that exists, whether through media or whatever the case may be, on how we have that talk with our kids and how we prepare them for engagement in law enforcement. All of us are preparing our kids for the same things, but we're all coming from different situations and backgrounds why we're having that conversation, right? But like you said, I'm preparing my son to be able to be, you know, with confrontation or yelling or aggressive conversation, to be able to switch gears no matter what the situation is that presents itself with him, right? And that could be with law enforcement. And just like you said, you're going to take that if it's with a police officer because your goal may be to stay safe or not to get a ticket, right? And that's ultimately one of the two goals most people are trying to achieve, whether black, white, or candy stripe. And then the other thing is going through a bad neighborhood or somewhere, not necessarily a bad neighborhood, a neighborhood that's not your set or your turf or wherever you're comfortable with, right? You may deal with people that's like, oh, he ain't from around here. He's shark food. So they're getting at you tough. You need to know how to deal with those situations. And it's not always going to be now, I know your father raised you not to come through these type of neighborhoods. Why are you here today, sir? It may be, what the fuck you doing around here? And my son's got to be prepared to be able to switch gears and be able to take both of those. And if daddy only provides you a comfortable bubble your whole life where you're not experiencing that, then ultimately I'm preparing you to go into a shark tank and be shark food. So I'm not asking you to act like a shark all the time, but I am preparing you for when you have to turn into a shark and do what you got to do. You can't be letting people out here punking you. And communication is key on how people sometimes try to pose that in conversations with people.
But that's not discipline. That's not the discipline side. That's a whole nother piece. We're talking about the discipline piece. Sure, and when I'm disciplining my son, I'm not worried about, you know, what society's talking about. I'm disciplining him because of his actions and what I don't want him to do once he get into society. Now, this is me disciplining you on that. However, in society, this is how you maneuver in those spaces. If we're talking about discipline, that's one thing. The thing you're referring to is how you maneuver once you leave the house. I think that's different from discipline.
I think it's all part of the conversation.
No, I mean, but you can have an aggressive conversation, and he could have just used different wording. He still could have been as mad as he was, but he could have used some different words.
So I'm gonna give y'all real life what just happened. And when we bring in the kids, this is a situation I think he can speak from. Just recently, for everybody,
in here now so he can defend himself.
Yeah, we're about to bring him in.
I'm gonna set it up though. I'm gonna set up the discipline piece, and this is a good segue. So my son was driving my truck, just got his license, or about to get his license. Yeah, you about to get put on blast. My dude drove.
Don't do that.
My truck ended up being in a situation that I don't have that truck anymore. I'm not gonna say what happened behind that truck. And when I saw and I pulled up, I wanted to murder him because of how everything went down. I wanted to murder the hell out of him. However, I got my bearings together, and the way that I got at him enough, just in simple conversation, not yelling, for the next 2 weeks, I'll let him speak on how he felt and what he went through in that whole process on getting through that. And I think the way that we communicate and engage allowed that to happen, because most of the time I probably would have ripped his neck off, but I didn't have to because of the way that we had this conversation and how things went. So when he comes in, I'll let him explain that piece and all the other stuff. But that's what I'm saying.
We ain't gonna keep the audience waiting forever, you know. Right. I'm gonna let y'all go ahead and introduce y'all kids.
All right, so this is my oldest son, Jaden Gary, graduating senior, getting into a couple of schools already. Plays basketball for CO.
Yo,
this is Jaden.
Well,
what up, Jaden?
What's up, Jaden? This is my daughter, LaPaula. She's currently in her second year of college at a very prestigious, smart school that she had to put a lot of work into. So having communication with her sometimes can be a challenge, because you got to you got to have your wits right, or she gonna outwit you. So this is my daughter Paula out here today. Hopefully she keeps it all PG. But I was a good parent, so I ain't on the hot seat right now.
well, Jaden and LaPaula, how do you guys feel about how you were disciplined growing up? Do you feel it was effective? Do you feel it went too far? Jaden, I know you're still in the household, so be mindful of what you say. But how do you guys feel about it?
I'll go first. Yeah, go ahead. All right. So since I was really young, my dad always just sat me down and had conversations about stuff like my grades or girls or just dumb stuff I used to do. He just talked to me. It was if you do it like this, you can't do this for the rest of your life. You're gonna meet somebody, or you're gonna do something you're gonna make them mad. You're gonna badly affect you. I think sophomore year or junior year, I was really slacking on my classes, and then my dad saw my grades and he was like, "You can't slack in this class right now. You can't slack in everything you do. So you're gonna have to really work hard if you want to have the privileges I already have, buying shoes or being on the game or go with my friends. You're gonna have to keep your grades up and stuff." And since that talk, I've always kept my stuff up. He didn't have to yell at me or hit me or none of that. He'll just he got a real talk with me. And that's all it really took.
And talking was most effective. Him talking to you was most effective.
But there was times that we did remove some major things. So one time he had a tournament he could have went to that was out of the state, and you just find what your kid's niche is and you remove that. Like Jeff said, he missed out on whole Christmas. This dude that missed out on some things where he was like, "Dang, life is about to change." If I don't.
So freshman year, me and my friend were going to go to this Gonzaga camp, this Gonzaga college basketball, and I had a bad grade in math, and he was like, "Hey, you're not going to the camp." And I was like, "For real?" And he was like, "Yeah." I thought he was messing around, but I really didn't get to go, and it hurt my feelings. So a lot.
So those kind of activities. I mean, I never had to put my hands on and then the last one before LaPaula jump in. How did you feel about the car situation?
Dang, I feel like I was more on myself than he was even on me, because once that happened, I was like, dang, I have a job now and stuff, and so right when it happened, I was talking to him I'm ready to pay, I'm ready to do all this and this and this, and then I had to pay it off, and I'm still paying for it. To this day, he didn't. It's not like he's forcing me to. It's once I get my paycheck, I already know I owe my dude some money. I don't ever want to owe anybody money. He taught me that too. You never want to owe anybody money. So I've always just been
But how did you feel? What did you feel like you lost between us? Which one thing that she said?
Trust. I didn't want his trust in me. I didn't have my license at that time, and so he was putting so much trust in me to drive his car and stuff like that. And I feel like I lost that for a second. I had to earn it back.
And I think that's the part that I wanted to make him in our relationship. And this is just before we go to LaPaula. I always want him to know that he has the most trust in me, and I have a lot of trust in him. So when he fuck up, it's you really fucked up. So that's where we go. So if he messes up, it's not about I'm about to really hurt you. It's you already hurt yourself, and this is how you hurt yourself going forward. And that's the kind of method that I take.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome, LaPaula. How do you feel about hearing these discussions about parents and how they treat their kids and how they discipline their kids. For those who don't know you, we're gonna brag on you for a little bit. Obviously, you're very, very intelligent, beyond your age, way beyond your age. One of the things that Tab did before you left was set you up on a group meet with the guys. So you talk to us pretty regularly on a group meet before you went off to college. So you have a platform where you can ask your uncles questions and things of that nature. But for you, I think there's always been a trust in knowing that you're gonna go out there and make the right decision simply because that's just you. Your head's always been screwed on tight. But how did you feel about your upbringing and things of that nature?
Yeah, I would say most of my discipline was arguments. Jacoby can attest to this. So we have an argumentative household, so we're always going tit for tat, mostly because I think I'm right. And most of the time I do be right, but I think I'm right. And so that's where all the arguments be. And so as a kid, I would get in trouble all the time for talking back or having a smart mouth. And I would say, Black parents, if you say something they don't like, it's talking back. And it could be factual, it could be anything, but if they don't like it, now you got a smart mouth. And so that's how I felt. So I would just I would challenge because I was a debate kid and like my grandparents liked to debate. We all be debating. I would say most of my discipline as far as like physical was from my mom. I didn't really get a lot of whoopings. Like the things I would be getting whoopings for would always be my mouth or something like that. But as I got older, same thing as Parrish was saying, they took away like physical objects. Like one time I got my car taken away all of my senior year and I lived super far from school. So they had me lifting to my internship, lifting home, finding rides, all while my car was sitting in the garage collecting dust. Like so I would argue things like that because I would be like, this is unreasonable. This don't make no sense. We're wasting time and money. And I would get in trouble. I feel like this also Kirk Franklin situation, I think a lot of people are saying like it's bad because he's a minister, but I think it'd be bad anyway, just as like a Black father, because I think a lot of times like the Black family structure is a lot different. Like we're more intense on our kids, we'll both like verbally and physically, like we'll really kind of hammer into our kids and a little bit too much, all because we're like trying to prepare them for like the outside world once you get out of the Black household. But I think we need to be careful with that because even though our Black kids need to be prepared, our Black kids are also dealing with a lot more than other non-Black kids. And sometimes I think parents don't consider that.
Yeah, I think the one thing I've learned is just, and I mean, Juan, you probably speak on it from your mental health and counselor side of things, is that the preparation that I thought that she needed to go to school, it's changing. It's always changing, right? Like, because I didn't realize the stress that's impacted on like the young college student or the young Black college student in general. So now
you didn't graduate.
Man, I didn't realize that though. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's what I'm saying though. I wouldn't have looked at it like that. I never would have thought about it that way. So when I listen to her talk about these experiences, I just am like, okay, there's a whole different way I got to approach this situation now. Now I got to really think about like, what is it that she needs to be successful? Or I didn't have to account for that because that wasn't my experience. Just like Jeff was saying, if you have different levels of education in your household and structure, you kind of undercut what that might mean to a person and how they prepare for that. And her being a real witty student, it's like, ooh, shoot, like, how do you prepare for all of those things? It requires a lot of different people to get involved in that village of raising.
Yeah, I would say for me, another thing too, like once I got to college, it was kind of like, I'll be calling them, it'll be 11, 12 at night. And I'll be like, oh, I'm such and such place. Like the freedom for me was like the biggest thing that I needed. Like, I don't like to be controlled and I still don't like that. And so a lot of our problems would just be, I feel like you're controlling me and I don't want to be controlled. I want you to recognize that I have some sense of autonomy. And even still, we kind of be dealing with that and it'd be like, look, I want to be my own person. And I'm growing on to be my own person. But I would say another thing with the discipline, like, I think Black parents, they don't apologize. They'll be wrong, but they're not going to tell you I'm wrong or I'm sorry. And so that would just eat me up because, my mom, she would whip me, tear me up in my room, like, hey, we're going to the store. And it would just be like, but didn't you just, but it's things like that where I think I really needed for my parents to just be more like, if you feel like you was wrong, like just as much as you want me to say when I'm wrong, you also got to like do the same thing. I think it's fair for like the parent or the student to like hold their parents up to the same type of standards. Like, you know, you can't talk to me any type of way. I know you want to discipline me, but like, just be careful about my emotions and things like that.
La Paula, I think you're right in regards of like our parents should be mindful of what they're saying to their kids, and they shouldn't talk to them any type of way. But I do think that kids do stuff to their parents as well that they wouldn't do to anybody else, right? So I think in a certain regard, you know, the thing that you said to your parents, you wouldn't say to somebody off the street. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's always a balance of, hey, you are supposed to be my, you know, the rule of thumb is we typically hurt the people who care for us the most, right? Because we feel like, oh, you won't leave me, so I can talk to you crazy, or I can lie to you, or I can steal from you, I can do these things, and you won't hurt me to the, you know, in the way that society would. So there definitely has to be a balance. I think that preparing our children to be mentally tough, right? You know, we're talking about, you know, emotionally intelligent, self-aware, and mentally able to manage themselves, as well as understanding that, hey, I have to be able to communicate how that makes me feel, right? Because if you know, when you're getting spanked and you say to your kid, and your kid say to you, hey, when you spank me, I feel like you don't love me anymore. Oh, wow, hold on. Now I can't spank you. But what came out of that situation, out of that spanking, was for you to be in touch with your feelings and express to me how this action made you feel. So much of the pressure in our community in general is the ability to express and articulate our feelings. Parents probably didn't do a good job of knowing how to communicate with their children, so it was easier to spank them. Now parents are better equipped to, you know, talk to their kids, so you see less spankings. But I think spankings does have a place in punishment. It definitely shouldn't be the number one go-to. It definitely should be the most consistent aspect of punishment, but I think it has a place.
I mean, I would say, I mean, just because we're talking about, you know, different styles and different things that go along with it. I mean, I never spanked or whooped her in her whole life. You know what I'm saying? So it was always communication based, you know, I mean, and I will say that there are some pluses and minuses to that, right? Like I mean, if I was to go back all the way in time, I still wouldn't have spanked her or whooped her. But even through communication, there are pluses and minuses to how different goals were achieved and trying to get her where I wanted her to be, or even her trying to get me where she wanted to be a lot as a parent. Like I learned a lot from how to parent with Taft, just based on the things that I learned from having La Paula and having the age gap between them, right? Like that's an essential piece to my parenting and stuff like that. So if I wouldn't have had her, it would have been just, oh, I have this son, and when he messes up, he's a boy, I have to be tough on him. But due to the fact that I had this daughter this whole time, that I never whooped or anything like that, and I always had to communicate with, it was definitely an easy bridge and a segue into how do you communicate with this young black male, and listening to the things that she's saying now and her being able to count on her young experience and giving me the portal, right? I got the actual hot tub time machine to be like, okay, well, Taff is 6. When she was 6, she's saying this and she thought and felt like that. It does help towards being like, all right, we can give him even more emotional tools or different things because of the lessons that we learn out of having this, you know, almost 21-year-old child in front of us. Or not 21 adult.
Parents get softer as they get older, man. My mom was crucial. Hey, look, no, my mom was on me a youngster, bro. My brother, maybe because he just was a good ass kid. Man, this dude, I'm like, damn, my mama is soft as hell now. If that was me, she would have murdered me. You know what I'm saying? But hey, I'm telling you, one mama probably doing the same thing she on here right now. Like you said, Tiki ain't never got a whooping.
Right, and I think that
mama got soft, tired of them boys. Like, you know what? Go ahead, Tiki. I ain't even tripping. Go ahead. I'm tired because these niggas maybe do this.
I think it's because as a parent, you start to pick up on things and you start to actually consider, like, what is the lesson I want to teach you? And to be honest, I learned this lesson early with Jaden. So, and we all did this. So you know how you tell your kid, like, hey, that's hot, don't touch it. And we all been told that, right? Hey, that's hot, don't touch it. And so this is just, and this may not be the best parenting moment of my life, but I'm not gonna lie about it. So, you know, the stove's hot, don't touch it. We're making cookies. And he's looking at me and he's still getting close to it. I'm like, yo, that stove's hot, don't touch it. Right. And he's still looking at me and he's looking at the stove. And eventually the boy stuck his hand out and still touched the stove. Now, instead of slapping his hand like most of us did, as soon as he touched it, he burnt his hand. I was like, didn't I just tell you it was hot? And he was like, yeah. And it triggered in my mind that from get-go, we can't really control what some of our kids are going to do. We can probably try to prevent it. We can probably try to stop it. But just like as we grew up, we still going to do what we do, right? So it was at that moment I was like, all right, I'm not gonna be able to beat you all the time because it's not gonna benefit me. So that's why I was like, I'm not gonna have to spank you. I'm only gonna have to talk to you and talk to you and talk to you. And even though I'm still talking to you, you're gonna make a dumbass decision anyway. And so as parents, it's like, hey, do I need to really put my energy in and cuss you out each time? Or should I just really try to prepare you for when you make those badass decisions to live with those consequences? And that's kind of the mindset I picked up from then forth.
I'm gonna say something, and maybe it's some ignorant shit right now, but I just feel it might be true. I got more money now, so part of how I parent is based on the fact that it's just I don't, and I'll equate that to make it something more real, right? The oppression and depression that I felt from not being able to do and things like that, I'm not as stressed about those things, right? So I look at our parents, and we talking about when our parents was younger and how our younger brothers and sisters have it easier. A lot of us was growing up was our parents was trying to make a way, right? Opposed to being set in careers, they fully deep in it, doing what they need to do, making the money they want to, not having to work the extra job and stuff like that. So their patience was thinner. Now we're starting our careers and we got these kids and they're able to kind of, as we grow in our career, the money is flowing, but we're stable. We not necessarily got that same level of stress that we do at our job. So the money translates over to that. And the way that I raise is differently too. Like I don't have that type of stress. You know what I'm saying? And I know LaPaula's mom was my wife was a 20-year-old parent, like trying to still graduate from college and things like that. That translates over. I mean, a lot of us, y'all got young moms and stuff like that raised y'all. Being a 30-year-old parent of a 6-year-old, I got some money, man. If you don't want to listen, shit, I'm going to just keep that back in my pocket. Like, we're not going to go through those type of things like that. And I'm not as stressed as I would have been trying to have him when I was in 2010, you know what I'm saying? Barely having $7 to rub together and also trying to figure out how to be in a relationship and be a parent. I do think that does affect the parenting experience.
It does, because if you think about it, right, your parents is out here, you know, like I said, man, I've never known my mom to slow down, right? All my life, my mom's had multiple jobs, right? And no matter what tax bracket she's in, you know, as she continued to elevate through the tax brackets, it's always this mindset that she's been doing this for so long. That's just what she does now, right? You know, my mom's been a nurse, you know, almost 30 years, you know, so we've been away from the poverty, the government cheese and all that for a long time, but that hustle is still in her. So you think about it, you've been at work all day long, right? You've been dealing with your punk ass boss. You've been dealing with all these different variables that's going on, and you come home and your kids ain't cleaned up nothing. You know what I'm saying? Your house stank, all that, man, that'll make a parent snap. Or like you said, Taff, you don't know how you're gonna pay this bill. You don't know how you're gonna keep the lights on tomorrow. You got all these circumstances, and your kid just spilled a whole gallon of milk because they playing in the kitchen. Situations like that will cause a person to snap, and now they're yelling and screaming and hollering at their kids because they're in a desperate situation, you know? So there's aspects of your circumstances, you know, with your income, you know, financial things that are going on with you in your marriage or relationship, that at times we displace those emotions and those feelings onto our children. So now we kicking the dog. We yelling at our kids. I think as we get older and we have more understanding, again, for me, my son responds to me raising my voice. My son responds to me, you know, sitting down and talking to him. So I don't need to necessarily go there and spank him. But if he was one of them kids that when you try to talk to him, he want to walk off from you and he want to jump up in your face, he may get more spankings. I think as you deal with your kids based on the circumstances that they need. There's a reason that, you know, people are so anti-corporal punishment. My son, his first school that he went to, formal school, it was a Christian school, and they spanked in his school, right? So you're telling me, obviously, there's a place where spanking is effective and works if they're still doing it in schools. Now, again, I understand in our community we're angry about it because, yeah, well, that's something we learned through slavery and all that. Well, you know, spankings happened before African Americans were enslaved, right? You know, as far as whippings, beatings, whatever it happened. I'm not necessarily saying it needs to be on that note, and I'm not necessarily diminishing what was going on to our ancestors, man, because that was horrific. But I'm saying there's certain degrees where certain people only respond to physical punishment. And you have to always understand what works for your children and what don't work for your children.
Yeah, I would say, I think not even as far as like the physical punishment thing coming from slavery. I think just in general, in a lot of Black families, there's a lot of discipline, but there needs to be like more love. You know what I mean? And so when I talked about how my mom would tear into me and then she would come in my room acting like everything was sweet, I still did kind of appreciate those moments, because in those moments she would say, you know, I still love you. I'm really mad at you and you ain't about to be getting out of this room, but like there's still some love and care. And I think for me, I've seen that like it's a little bit different when you have like your grandparents and you see how your mom was raised or your parents were raised, and you can kind of understand them a little bit more. And you're like, okay, that's why you do that. Or that's why you make it a point to kind of come after and like show the love or the emotion. And just with my little brother, it's like, I want the same type of thing. Like, even though we're disciplining him, it's like, we still want to be like disciplined, but also I still love you, even though I'm disciplining you. And I think that's a piece like missing, and also probably like missing in the Kirk Franklin thing is like, where is like that still love at the end? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Y'all think they got it easier? Jaden and Paula, y'all think they got it easier, the little brothers?
Almost definitely.
You're talking about your little brothers.
Oh, my little, yeah. I think so. Like, I don't know what you told them, but like, I didn't really deal with my dad until I was like older, because he was still going through college and doing stuff. So like, all I saw of my mom and that side of parenting, and like, doing what I did over there was not going to work at my dad's house. I just had to adapt to both lifestyles, and it was a weird jump to like build more with my dad and like live with my mom. But like, I feel like Justin, he's in the same kind of situation I am, so it's gonna be great. Like, now that I'm older, I can like tell him how to get through stuff that like I had to do by myself and stuff. But I think he for surely has it easier than I did, for sure. I had to make all the mistakes for him to, of my dad to chill on him when stuff I used to do. Like, Justin could do it, and it's like, it's wrong, but this way it's like before you get on him.
Yeah, you already ripped the Band-Aid off on that. Yeah,
right. The first child is always the experimental child, right? You're trying to figure out as a parent like what you want to do, and I think to a certain degree, we look at our parents and how they did us, and we figure, okay, what worked? If it worked, I'm gonna put that into my parenting bag. If it didn't work, I'm gonna get rid of it. I'm gonna discard it. And so I think that's what your first and your second kid get. They get that. All right, let me figure out what worked. Let me figure out what don't work. Okay. Hey, before we jump off though, I wanted us to comment. So there's we posted the video for those of you who don't know what we're talking about. There's a woman, and what she did was, her son had, done something wrong, and she took his walk-in closet, took his walk-in closet, and she made it look like a jail cell, right? She just put his bed in there, a little bed with a white sheet, and she took the little closet railings, and she hung up his underwear and his socks and stuff like that, like you would see in a jailhouse situation. I think the kid's like 7, 8 years old, maybe a little older. I think he was a little older than 8 because he looked like a big kid. How did you guys feel about that? How do you guys feel when parents kind of go through those extremes, whether they're taking their kids to scare straight, they're creating a scare straight situation in their homes? How do you guys feel about those type of parenting styles and things of that nature?
I thought it was a cool little thing that she did, because you do something like we talk about. You stealing from the store, where you going? To jail. You know what I'm saying? You doing something that's criminal, where you going? Jail. So instead of, you know what I'm saying, you going to the jail, real jail, we're gonna make that your bedroom closet jail. So if these are the kind of actions that you want to partake in, these are the consequences. I thought it was cool.
I mean, yeah, I think that, just as a police officer and stuff like that, if we could, and parents could come down and visit, the jails to show their kids and stuff like that, I'm cool with that, and let people know, like, there are certain consequences that far outweigh the consequences I can give you in this house. And if you end up here, I can't help you. And this is what that actually looks like, right? I remember when I was in elementary school and we took a field trip to Alcatraz, and you could walk inside of the cells to see how big they were. I was like, oh, hell no. I ain't never, ever, ever, ever trying to go to no jail. Like, you mean I got to stay here for 5 years, 10 years, 2 months, 3 months? Like, this is as big as it gets, and it's a cage in front of it. I'm claustrophobic as it is. I'm not doing no shit like that. So that alone, you know, I do think that giving kids like, okay, this is how small your world can get based on how big your mistake is. I think that's
Right.
I'm okay with that.
So to each their own. I mean, if that's the method that she chose, that's great. Would I put my son in a room and let him pretend it's a jail cell? I don't know if I would make up the room that way. Maybe I'll put him in his room and say, you know, this is what's going on. The reason why, damn education, man. I've been reading too many damn books, and you put in situations and you get familiar with them, you tend to
adapt.
Yeah, you adapt. And so I don't know if I would want to create that scenario. And then that's what the kid knows. Like, hey, this is, you know, the takeaway for the kids, like, I don't want you to go to jail. Yes. But I don't know if her method works for that kid. That's great. I don't know if I would set it up the same way, but I could see where she was going in that.
You send your son in his room all the time, P.
Right. But I'm not turned into a jail. But I'm not turning into a jail cell. Like, I don't know. I'm on the fence. If it works for that kid, though, maybe he need that extreme. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm not saying I'm speaking against it. Maybe he needed that extreme. Maybe the mom was like, I'm tired of you doing what you're doing. And I did it this way and I did it this way. And this is the method I'm taking. So, and that's the one that we see. But I think there's other ways that I would have thrown him into that room and created a facility of which you're going to feel like you in jail. But I don't want him to feel like, you know, I don't want them to adapt to a certain kind of look or environment. That's just my perspective.
Yeah.
For me, oh, go ahead, LaPaula, my bad.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I agree with Pete. I don't think that would have worked for me. I like to be by myself anyway, so it would have been cool up in there. That wouldn't have worked for me. But same thing, if that works for that kid, that's cool. But I know it's kind of like project-based whoopings. Like, that's kind of what it's giving.
I think for me, I look at it like I wouldn't have done it, but just because I wouldn't have been creative enough to think about it. But I do think as I stated, there are certain circumstances that you need to give your kid a picture of what things would look like if they continue down that behavior. You know, and for me, I guess the thing that bothered me was there was people criticizing what she did, and it's not like she whooped the kid, she yelled, hollered, screamed at her. She said, basically, this is the environment that you would live in if you continue down this path. And for some kids, that worked. You know, we've seen some kids, they go through the Scared Straight program and they scared shitless. So to me, we got a Scared Straight show where kids are being traumatized, right? But when it's almost like in our community sometimes, whether it's from Black people or from outsiders, when we enact something that is closer to the extremes that society wants to implement on us, then there's an issue. Well, why would she do that to her kid? Well, because if her kid keeps stealing, that's where he's gonna end up. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's aspects of punishment, again, that has to be effective. Like you guys said, you find out what your kid loves and you take that away. Right. That's one of the aspects of a punishment when you take stuff away. The other aspect of punishment is you find out what your kids did wrong and you apply something that's undesirable. And if it's undesirable to be in jail, then you apply a mimic or a stimulated jail cell situation for a kid to learn a lesson, because, you know, it's too many Black men in jail. And I think for a certain regard, a lot of them wouldn't have been there had they had a better understanding of what those circumstances was truly like. Now, it's the difference between seeing it on TV and to see it in person and how your fucking head hurting, you know.
I mean, but just like you said, some of these things are used to be informative and educational. I get that in this situation, we're looking at it as, wow, how harsh and how extreme. But let's look at other forms in which we put these type of things in front of people to get some type of level of education, understanding, and deterrence from the action. At high schools, we got every 15 minutes, right? Where they take a whole group of kids and they literally simulate car accidents, them dying, all from drinking, right? Like drinking alcohol and either getting hit by a drunk driver, being involved in some type of DUI type of crash. And not only do they simulate that for the whole day, at my school, they used to land a helicopter like in the middle of the school and get you airlifted to John Muir and things like that for one kid out of the whole group. Then on the third day or the second day, they would come in and actually have a real funeral, like in front of the whole school, where your parents didn't get to see you. They actually sent the police to do death notifications, like at your house and stuff like that. I'm not saying that stopped everybody from going off and drinking and getting DUIs in their future, but think about how many people were like, nah, I remember that thing in high school and that one time, and that was enough for me to be like, if I can't Like, I'm gonna drink responsibly. Like, I'm gonna get me an Uber, or I'll be the DD for everybody. Cause I remember that one time in high school where every 15 minutes fucked my head up, and I don't do that type of shit, you know?
Yeah, that was something they did at Sac State. They should drop a car in every like fall or something, and it'd be like shattered car. Like, I know somebody died in that car, bro. And they'll put up there, you know, where they was drinking and driving, pictures of the scene, all that kind of stuff. They used to do that at Sac State all the time, and it's like, whew, you got to be careful, because even on campus like Sac State campus, you can call like a safe ride, and it's free. Student volunteer and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, you know, promoting the safe ride thing, but it's like, damn, that car looked crazy. But I think it's a tool. Like, it might be extreme to some, but I think it was a cool. Like you said, it was creative to me.
Yeah.
The biggest thing with punishment, you know, to wrap it up for me is, you know, we got to make sure whatever we're doing is developmentally appropriate, right? You have to be aware of the level, not just the chronological age, but the mental developmental level of your kid. Are they mature enough to handle this punishment, right? Because a 16-year-old who may have a mental maturity of a 10-year-old may not be able to handle that situation. And an 8-year-old who has a mental maturity of a 14-year-old may be able to handle. We got some little 8-year-old kids out here. They talking reckless to you and they in the streets, right? Let's be real. So I think you have to be mindful of the developmental maturity level of your kid, and use that as a consideration when punishing them, to make sure that they understand what's happening and why is this happening. You know, that just throwing your kids and whooping them and spanking them and putting them on punishment for no reason, I think that's gone now. Like I've always said, for me, I needed spankings. I actually appreciate the whoopings that my mom gave me, because I felt like they kept me in line. It made me be mindful and fearful of my mom. You know what I'm saying? To this day, my mama tell me, sit down and shut up. I'm gonna sit down and shut up. You know what I'm saying? The worst thing I could just leave and go to my own home, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna still sit down and shut up. You know, that fear is still a sense. That respect is still there. I think you see so many kids as they get older that once they're not 18 anymore, they feel like they can do and say and talk however to their parents. And that's one thing in our community that I don't see happening as much. I don't see us talking crazy and reckless. Man, there be people of other races and ethnicities in my office talking crazy to their parents. I'm talking about big cash money. And it always bothers me, like, man, had you instilled some sense of punishment and discipline into your kid a lot earlier, then they would have done things different. Too many parents are afraid to hurt their parents' feelings when society is looking to hurt their life. So we have to make sure there's a healthy balance in there.
Yeah,
I agree.
Okay. What do you guys got any parting words for our discussion on parenting and spanking kids and all that before we jump off?
Yeah. I wanted to say, I do think it's possible to have a healthy relationship with your kid that isn't one with spanking. I mean, just like he was talking about, I never got spanked from him, and I never deserved to get spanked as well. But, you know, we have a really good relationship because of that. And there's some things that I'm more comfortable with telling him because he doesn't instill as much control, you know? So it's like, sometimes you can't have the best of both worlds. You may be sacrificing, you know, the secrets that you may get or the comfortability that your kid has for those spankings and that verbal abuse, you know? So it's like, you do want to really pay attention to what's going to be the best thing so you can have a healthy relationship with your kid. And I think that requires like instilling that love and actually figuring out time to what is best for your kid, what suits them.
Yeah,
That's a private school, college education right there, y'all.
I'm gonna go ahead and echo and agree with her the same things, right? Like, I'm in a position with her where, I'm not gonna sit on here in front. I do make mistakes as a parent, you know, I make mistakes in general, but I'm able to have a level of conversation with her where she can call me out and communicate my level of mistakes, right? Because there's a genuine respect there. It's not like we're equal, right? Like, you know, but we are equal in a sense, you know, where it's like this kid parent thing doesn't necessarily go above and beyond our levels of communication. I can learn from the stuff she's telling me and sometimes be corrected on it, right? Like, as she's growing and maturing as a woman, there's things that I have to be able to like respect or be able to communicate. And she has to be able to communicate that we have to be able to kind of balance. So I do appreciate the balance that I have in that. And that's the same reasons why I try to make sure I transfer some of that over into how I deal with her brother, you know? And so that's my take on it. But I mean, at the same time, if you got to do what you got to do, you got to do what you got to do, parents. We ain't telling nobody don't whoop your kids. Choice is yours.
Man, I said whoop them. Whoop them. But like we talked about, you got to do that debriefing after. It got to be that conversation of what I did wrong, how can I correct it, what I should have done, and it's what you should have did was this. And then like LaPaula say, always end on some I love you stuff, and it's important that the kids know that I'm gonna discipline you for sure, or I'm gonna take away stuff for sure. Like I told you I would. But if your actions change, then you get your privilege back. It's that simple. Like you know what I'm saying. Next time, don't do that. Then you're good. But they have to know like what they're being corrected on. It's not just spanking and then you go to your room and then we never talk about it because you don't learn anything.
Yeah. And my thing is, I think you should discipline for their transition to society because your children are going to be on your house only but so long. The rest of the time they're going to be out in the world. So I ain't going to be disciplining you for what I want you to do in my house. I got to discipline you to be prepared for what your life is going to be like. So that's how I consider disciplining, because after 15 years, 16 years with me, you're going to do what you do. So that's how I look at it.
That's a good point, Pete. I tell a lot of my clients, my son's not really old enough to understand this conversation yet, but I tell a lot of my clients, no matter where you go, there's going to be an authority figure, right? Mm-hmm. So just because you leave your parents' house, now you got your boss, now you got the police, now you got law, judges. You're never going to have a situation where there's no authority figures that you have to answer to. So your actions are going to always have to have some type of consequences if you have negative actions. So, I think discipline helps kids understand and recognize authority to a certain degree. And rather it happens in certain ways. I mean, timeout's a great one. Taking things away from your kids, I think it's very effective. Hell, some kids need to learn to do manual labor, right? Look, true story. And before we jump, this quick one. I had a client I was seeing for a couple months years ago in Oklahoma, and the kid was just wilding out, man. He never listened to his parents, never did anything. And then probably our fourth or fifth session, man, he was like, man, we got to go to my grandparents' house, because he was from the city, but his grandparents lived in the country. They still worked on a farm and all that. He's like, man, I hate going there, man. I wish my parents wouldn't take me. He was like 14 or something like that. And he had an older sister. Well, I told his parents, the next time he act a fool, take him to his grandparents' house for the day. Make him go out there on the farm and do some work, milk some cows, get some hay and all that. And that behavior right there, the next time he got in trouble, they sent him up there. They said, every time we're going to send you up there. That kid literally, he did a complete 180. That kid changed because the discipline that was implemented in that situation was effective. So I think to LaPaula's point, it has to be effective, and your kids got to know that you love them. I'll give my son a hug and a kiss every day and tell him I love him before I send him to school, give him a hug and a kiss before we go to bed at night. So trying to instill that trust and love, but also in the middle, he's going to recognize that you got a line, your daddy going to do something to you. So, I appreciate y'all joining. LaPaula, thank you for taking time out of your busy college girl life. We need you to do a little turnaround of the camera, make sure ain't no boys in there.
Right here.
Spin that.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Go ahead, turn that camera around. But again, we're extremely proud of you. We love that you were able to join. Thank you to our audience who viewed in today with their questions and their comments. We appreciate you guys. Follow us at Braspective on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. We're trying to figure out how to do this. Instagram Live, where we can have some of these conversations as well. So you guys have any questions, any comments, go to our Facebook page. Please reach out, please write, and everybody have a good Sunday.
Peace.
Ah, man. He didn't end it.
He's still alive.
Yeah.
Close it out.